Welcome back, everyone. We're going to do a little bit of jumping around tonight to accommodate for the Live Sandbox players who aren't feeling well, so they have to play remotely. So we're going to jump to solo matches first, and then we'll return to the team matches later on. And Wolf, we've got a banger of a solo match group here in the round of 32. Almost looks like it should be a round of 16, given the reputation that all these players have.
Yeah, all these players have experience, right? These are not young players who are inexperienced, right? We don't have the rookie conversation like we had with most, for example. And here's our format, of course, for solos, just to remind everybody, as if you don't get out of the first initial group stage, you are eliminated. But if you get out, you have the opportunity, of course, to then play double elimination. So this is arguably the most stressful and like worst part of the tournament for what happens to you if you lose, right? I mean, just straight up. So really important here, and we're in our final group. Of course, you can see the prize pool down below, so quite a lot of money on the line here if you do win, even though it's a preseason.
Yeah, I mean, pretty solid, right? So first place, that's about 10 million Korean won, which is about, you know, like 9,000 USD. So, and it's solos, right? So you take that all for yourself. Now we're looking at Group D. We just had Group C yesterday. Of course, A and B happened last week. And Group C, I would say, looking at the lineup, those are exactly the players you kind of assume would move on, and Ding, Sungbin, Joker, and Hyunsu. But now we've got like JJONG, who's everyone's been waiting for him to enter the solo matches here at KDL after his incredible reign over at KRPL. But then you've got I mean, everyone here is experienced, right? I mean, we'd have to list off the entire group to say, you know, who's got what experience, because all of them have had the experience to play in KDL and in solos.
I'm glad to see Cosu make a return too, because he had a bit of a rougher start to preseason 1, getting eliminated fairly early despite his experience. He's out of the military and trying to make a return here in KDL, so hope he can perform tonight. As while we do have some clear favorites, I would say, I do think that this is going to be one of those groups where you just don't really know until the end who's getting out. You know, I don't think it's going to be like, okay, we pretty much know top 4, and then we're going to see who hits 50 first. I don't think it's going to be that kind of group. As JJONG is our yellow racer, one of those favorites, though, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. While it is his first time in KDL, don't let that fool you. I mean, he was the king of KRPL, right, over at Kartrider Rush Plus. And after his ace match win streak in Preseason 1, everyone's been really craving to see him in solos. But next up with the Black Stripe, it is going to be Luning, who we just actually saw race over for Aura.
Yeah, so hopefully he's not feeling too sad about what went down. Of course, taking a loss earlier today, but this is about your solo career now, and a player I think a lot of people are very excited for here in KDL.
Yeah, just a fan cheering on for Luning to tear it up on the track. Next up, it is going to be Percent, his sign saying 100% chance to flip the entire KDL. And this guy, another racer over by Sensation, alongside Hojin, who has so much experience, right, within Kartrider. So he's trying to make it over to the round of 16. He's got a lot of stuff going for him today.
He's got a lot of people here to support him as well. Love these signs. The double sign meta is alive and well. As we move on to our white racer here, JiMin, who is the former item ace for Live Sandbox, who had a great performance in solos, making it pretty deep in Preseason 1, and I'm hoping that he could continue to actually make that happen here. You can see the only plays he haven't gotten are the podium ones, 1, 2, or 3, but he has gone very deep.
Yeah, I mean, got that 4th place, setting a career high for himself in solos in Preseason 1. See if he can renew that record. And here's that man you were talking about earlier, Wolf. It's Cosu. Again, one of the kind of veteran players in terms of age, but also this is one of those guys who used to play as a player himself and then was a coach. He even played as like staff, went to the military, and now he's back.
Yeah, one of the older players in Kartrider Drift League. As moving on here to Nock, who will be in green tonight. Super Observer mode. This guy is so good at solos because he can just see openings so well, and he's a player that even if you look at him in the standings, he's back at 7th, 8th place. Watch the final push, because he finds a way into top 4. He's more of a pension-style racer here in solos.
Yeah, he just kind of sneaks in for those extra points, so we'll see what he does. Spell over from Rox as well. Songnam Rox alongside JJONG, so both of them kind of cheering each other on to say, let's go up to the round of 16 together. I mean, we've got, what, 2 Aura players, 2 Rox players. I mean, you would love to see everyone from your own team move up, but we got to remember, at the end of the day, it's solos.
It is solos. It's all about you and your individual performances. We will have Wave to round us out here. It's awkward for me to be in such a group now. Take a look at him, you know, taking 21st in PS1. See if he can make it out of these preliminary groups this time around. has a lot of experience here. I'd say one of the underdogs in this group to be sure, but a player who needs to be respected, I think, by the other racers.
Yeah, absolutely. If we had to pick the weakest link, yeah, I think it would be Wave, right? He hasn't made the round of 16. He's trying to set that record high for his own career right now. But at the same time, it's a free-for-all with 8 racers, so you never know who's going to be the one that pushes you out of the running. It's a point-style race. We'll explain more as we go into the races. The first track is going to be over on Mine Winding Slopes. And the race is on. Try to see who gets first place for the first time to try to select that next track, as that's the advantage you get for crossing the finish line first.
Right, so winner gets to pick the track, top 4 advance from the group, and that is basically what you guys need to know, as obviously you get more points the higher you are in the standings, as you would expect. Bottom, you will actually lose points. If you retire, you will lose a lot of points, but it hasn't happened yet here in Kart Rider Drift just yet.
Yeah, and JJONG just trying to play it safe. He makes way. He doesn't want to get bumped off on that jump around the corner. So while he did hold first place for a short bit, he slows things down. Oh, and he tried to avoid the crash, but he goes right barreling down the cavern there, and JJONG now knocked all the way down to 7th place.
Yeah, several players falling back, knock as well, taking the worst of it, and that is pretty much this racing dog for him. I don't think he'll retire, but I mean, it's in the conversation. That's how rough that exchange ended up going for him, as Percent here is taking a significant lead right now here with Cosu and Luning challenging him. Cosu, great start to this group right now if he could actually take a first place.
Yeah, I mean, Cosu, he would love to be able to try to make a name for himself back in solos. Of course, he tried to lead a squad back in Preseason 1 as well, and he's playing it very safely, but Luning finds the draft right at the end and is going to be able to overtake him. Cosu gets the draft a little bit too late after landing from the jump, and Knock should be able to still cross the finish line. We'll avoid that retire.
Yeah, 4 seconds to spare. It wasn't too bad for him. You have quite a large window, of course, in pro play. You're never really going to be that far behind. But man, Luning with that great draft there at the end, but he and Cosu really ahead of the pack. It feels bad for Cosu. He loses control at the last possible second, but still, second place is going to be 7 points picked up here for Cosu, feeling very good. So we do have, you know, at the start here, Luning taking the lead and will be able to pick the next track as JJONG recovered in 5th, will be able to pick up 3 points. Yeah. You know, I feel like that's respectable when you consider what happened to him back there.
Yeah, I mean, and the worst of it is, right, he tried to avoid it. You could see very clearly he was trying to slow down before these jumps, and he just gets bumped right into that little crack on the track. But he is able to recover. Meanwhile, the story was that Luning overtakes right at the last second and is going to get that track selection. See what his pick is here for round 2.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Everybody's keeping hands dry. Palms are sweaty here in Kart Rider Drift League.
Yeah,
you know?
they do. Yeah, but no one's eating their mom spaghetti though, right? They might have eaten their rice, they might have eaten their kimchi, but they didn't eat their mom spaghetti today, I can tell you that much. Coming to the tracks here for Kart Rider Drift. See what Luning's selection is after keeping his hands dry here for the race. You know, I start to wonder, like, do those lyrics still really reach everyone in the audience? I'm not even sure anymore generationally.
How old are we?
Yeah, we'll love to find out in the comments. But first off, we're going to round 2. It is for Zigzag Timberland.
Here we go, the track pick of Luning here for our second round. He is the leader, and once again, starting off in top 3.
Yeah, Luning just trying to make sure he can stay in contention for the podium, look for an opportunity towards the end. Spell continuing to shoot forward, and Kosi's vying for that #1 spot. Again, he actually played very aggressively against Spell right there, and Spell loses control for just a second.
Yeah, now of course trying to maintain that lead as the drafts are very hot on his heels. Spell actually trying to make a go for it. Will actually be able to block him out for now, as Wave having a better start here this time around as well. Cosu, man, he is just playing safe right now, to be totally honest. It will actually cost him here.
Yeah, goes a little bit too wide there on the build, and he's allows everyone to try to catch up. Now, JJONG, this is a track where he's always kind of found an opening to be able to overtake everyone. It looks like he hit a collision once again, though, so he's back in 8th place. We'll focus now on the front of the pack. JiMin has entered the podium stages for now.
Cosu still center stage here by our observers as he is trying to fight his way back into top 4 here, but his control was lost, and Luning might be going for the back-to-back here. I mean, still in the first lap as we're about to cross that checkered flag here still. I mean, very impressive start for this player who's had such a fantastic year so far.
Oh, and a nice opening found by Wave. Now JiMin with the boost is going to be able to regain control, but Wave, he's continuing to stay in the top 3. He's trying to get the majority of points here on the round 2 in Zigzag Timberland.
Luning just uncontested here. The gap is wide enough to where it's very difficult to actually try to take an aggressive inner and look for a pass. He's almost out of draft range, or was. Now we're knocking on the door as Luning, we're getting close to the end here. See if Knock can get one final opportunity here as we move into these final turns.
Yeah, he absolutely should, but the question is JiMin and Cosu going to allow him to do that for free as well? I mean, again, it is a free-for-all. Now Knock, he's just trying to see if Luning will make way or not. Luning says not at all. I intend to go into these hairpins in the first place spot.
Yeah, and he's handling those hairpins very well here, or at least the opening of them. Now we go to the major hairpin.
Oh, Spell! Yeah, he just finds that inner right as Luning tries to take the safe spins around the hairpin, and Spell, he should be able to hold on to this. Luning, he's going to try to find a draft near the end, but it's only 100 meters, and Spell will be able to cross the finish line first.
Yeah, Knock, you know, in those hairpins, hard to use your nitro advantage. He had an extra nitro, but it's just not safe to actually use that there, so he's not able to push his way through. It looked like maybe on a different track you have that kind of advantage there. Maybe you actually get that final push and you could steal away the win. Won't happen this time. Will be a podium finish for him, but Spell, with that really nice aggressive inner as we entered those hairpins, saw a window, took his risk, and Luning not able to get the back-to-back. It will be also a new track record coming through for Spell here. Very impressive start, 222 on the day. And this pushes him up to 2nd place. Cosu maintaining top 3. And we now have a pretty defined gap between our top 3 and the rest of the racers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Luning, of course, with the 1 and 2 finish in round 1 and 2, holds on to the 17 points. Meanwhile, Spell representing Songdam Rocks alongside JJONG shoots up into double digits as well. Now, JJONG, I mean, we see this guy trying to find those openings that he usually does in team matches, but you got to remember, in team matches, you at least have 3 other racers that are on your side, right, that will allow you to make way and push forward. Here, everyone's out on their own, and JJONG's just not finding the openings he does in either team or 1v1s.
Yeah, just not finding those same opportunities. I think the same to be said of Knock as well, who I think has had so far here a fairly disappointing performance. You know, normally a guy who makes those final pushes has not been happening.
Okay, well, the next track, it was selected by Spell, and it looks like we're going to a bit more of a wide track as we go to WKC Korea Circuit. And the race begins. This was Spell's choice. See if he can maintain the back-to-back first place finishes to continue a streak of selecting tracks.
Yeah, Cosu once again with a fantastic start here, up in top 3, battling it out with Knock and Percentage. JJONG, let's see if he can find those openings this time around.
Yeah.
Committing an additional nitro here. As it just feels like it's the story of Cosu against 2 other people at the beginning of these tracks every single time.
Yeah, I mean, Cosu, it looks like his agenda is try to get to first place and then at least try to maintain it, because if you don't get first, you'll still get 2nd or 3rd. That seems to be his agenda. Rather than trying to play this calculator method, just say, okay, let's get first, and then if I get pushed back, I'll still get enough points to try to maintain a podium. Now, JJONG, with the idea that there aren't obstacles on the map itself to hold him back anymore, he is now finally entering the podium stages in the first lap.
Yeah, Cosu could try to take an aggressive inner here. He's just going to play it safe. I mean, that's been the name of the game for this guy. He's just, like you said, he's like, yeah, I could win, but if I mess that up, I might actually fall back really hard. So I'm actually just going to play as safe as possible and just finish these races in top 3 if I can. And I mean, he's just avoiding collisions right now. As I said, a small caster curse, but he's still doing fine. As Spell will actually take that first place spot away. Luning and he are now competing. It's funny how Cosu is playing. He's the perfect racer to follow for our observers because he's got like the perfect angle to see everything.
Yeah.
He's not doing anything crazy. He's just going to drive like he's driving a car, not breaking any laws.
Yeah, exactly. He's just following everyone and saying, okay, these guys are crazy, but I'm just following the road right now. Meanwhile, of course, some of these other players are trying to make these collisions happen, make an opening aggressively for themselves. As we look at the front of the pack, Spell still maintaining that first spot. Luning now finally catching a break, but Jung's right on his tail.
Yeah, JJONG really trying to push this draft to his advantage here. 500 meters to go.
Yeah, he takes the wide, but with the draft, he's going to get the advantage. And now with both players with a boost, he's going to be able to continue to maintain, even make sure he tries to block against either Spell or Luning. And JJONG will catch a break, get the 10 points, and be able to select the next track.
As much as we could talk about Kosu's safe play, you know, he was able to maintain top 3 for a significant portion of the track, but then fell back before even the second lap down to about 5th, 6th, and then ends up finishing 7th, his worst finish of the group so far. Not that it's going to push him out of contention. It's going to be just a 0 he picks up here in that 7th place spot, as we have another track record set here by JJONG at 157.422. But JJONG picks up a win here, right? Much needed. Spell, Luning, these players still up in top 3, so you can see that JJONG needed those points so badly. He's now pushed himself into top 4. Kosu on the edge of it. And you can play safe as much as you want, but I think eventually you will be overtaken by these players who are so hungry to push into those top spots because they're significantly behind. And you know, I want to see Kosu actually try to push the limit a little bit. I want to see what he's capable of when he's taking risks.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that it's not like Kosu's playing a strategic style either of that pension style or super observer mode like we used to see Nock. He's not succeeding so far yet in this group, but it's more so just like, okay, get first place as early as possible and then just kind of let Destiny take its course. And then Kosu eventually, like you said, especially in a group like this, like people will start to play aggressive, overtake you more and more. Meanwhile, here's JiMin on the screen, also not too far away from that cutoff line for the top 4 for the time being, but we still have several more tracks to go. The choice from JJONG takes us to Mine Rickety Rails.
Off we go on Mine Rickety Rails here. Wave will actually take first place here off of the start.
Looks like it's just trying to maintain that for the time being. Now this is another map where there could be some hazards happening as we enter the second cave here. You got to try to make that jump and land on the track. JJONG will be safe for it, and Spell as well in front of him.
Luning here pushing up into first place with JiMin right now competing. And this is really interesting to see how consistent Luning starts have been, as Cosu actually this time will be absent from our top 3 at the beginning of this race. Has had so many great starts in the first lap, but won't be the case this time around, as some collisions may happen as if we continue to be this densely packed here on Rickety Rails. It is a very narrow track at times.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're even still seeing a couple bumps on the walls here and there, and players trying to recover now on those jumps. So everyone just tries to respect each other, right? Stay their course, not making any aggressive plays just yet. You know, you can't really go for any type of straight boost or anything like that in the free-for-all, but we're still all pretty close, except for Percent, who has now fallen right at the edge of the minimap.
All right, Cosu actually here with an extra nitro as well. We'll pop that one out here and push into top 3. This is the aggressive play I wanted to see from this guy, and let's see if he can hold on to top 3 here. It's so important for him. He's sitting at 11 points on the edge of the cutoff line.
Yeah, meanwhile, JJONG, it looked like he tried to weave in and out on that straightaway right before the cave, and a couple players nearly dodging that fall off the bridge, off the Rickety Rails, and JJONG has overtaken to first place, now battling with Cosu.
And Cosu here fighting with JiMin here, looking for that first place swap. Only 200 meters to go. Looks like JiMin is going to take this one. JJONG to follow. Cosu will drop back to 4th behind Luning. But another top 4 here for Cosu, man. He's like a black taxi driver, you know. He's got his certification. Yeah. He's got the shirt that says best driver.
Yep.
Because even when he was taking those risks and actually using his nitro aggressively, he did it in such a calm, collected way, and he was not going to just pull into a hard drift into the corner or anything like that. That's not his play style. It is fun to see this guy pensioning his way, intentionally or not, here into top 4. JiMin will take that 10-point bump, and you can see he actually with this will push ahead of Cosu despite his top 4 finish there. So you know, no longer safe here as Cosu. He is going to have to compete with these top players in order to keep his spot and to have his chances of moving on from the group.
Yeah, absolutely. We're starting to see that, you know, the top four, they're distancing themselves from like the bottom 2 or 3, but at the same time, in terms of who the seeding's gonna be and who actually gets that final cutoff into 4th place, it's getting closer and closer. So see if we're gonna see any players start to really shoot out forward as we enter what looks like might be the second half of this group in solos. The choice is going to take us to another new track coming in Preseason 2. It is WKC Brazil Circuit. Right now, Luning leading at 27 points as we enter round 5 of the solos. This is Group D in the round of 32.
Yeah, this is a track we talked about in teams earlier, Brazil Circuit. It's very wide, so very difficult to actually find angles of attack if someone has that defensive setup in first. But the early laps, you know, you're going to learn a lot about how these players want to, what builds they want to take, because the sky is the limit really on what you can do. You see Luning actually goes through the grass there and avoids collision, and that's how he's going to take first place away.
Yeah, of course, but if you want to go through that grass, you got to spend that nitro as well, right? So we saw players like Nock actually just taking the track, making sure they can maintain their boost gauge, because you're going to have another opportunity come lap 2.
Yeah, you're also not going to be able to build as much nitro when you go through the grass like that. As Spell will at least hold on to this lead for now. Nock with that additional nitro, making a play for this to actually cut through. And actually, that was great from Nock, actually. He is just able to slide diagonally through the entire squad and take that first place spot into his own hands.
Yeah, and that build where he just doesn't take the first shortcut is really starting to pay off. He still constantly has 2 full gauges to go, and now in lap 2, he has the choice to go through that first shortcut. Let's see if he takes it.
Yeah, really cool play here from Nock. I think kind of changing the meta on this map a little bit right now, as Percent here is going to challenge him and try to create some collision. That was risky.
Yeah, but Nock just cuts right in front of him as well, and Nock is continuing to block against everyone who's trying to overtake him as well. Spell takes a high risk, but he actually gets bumped to stay on the grass a bit longer than he wants, and Nock is still maintaining first place.
Yeah, Nock is playing this so well. JJONG trying to come up and challenge him right now, but Nock he still has that extra nitro. It's just a little bit of extra charge, but it's actually giving him enough momentum here, and I think his strategy is going to pay off.
Yeah, and he's always constantly cutting it at a sharper angle onto the grass. Now JJONG finally finds an opportunity, but you have to go around the grass once more, and Nock knew the build he had in mind. He's going to take the closer track here. Spell finally overtakes him near the end. Nock tries to at least maintain second place. He will do so.
Yeah, that was really impressive. Spell will be able to ultimately take first place at the end, but I like that we framed that around Nock, because he really had his own way to play this one out. He held that extra nitro, took that initial boost, and once you have a nitro advantage and you're in first place, everything we talked about on this track kind of compounds on itself. Harder to pass, harder to make those attacks. You can see his defensive play was fantastic. He is ultimately stopped by Spell at the very end as the track narrows, and Spell has that angle he takes down the right side, but he barely wins. And it's going to be 7 points here for Nock regardless. Now, Spell actually will push himself into first place now with this win. As you can see, the line drawn between JiMin and Nock is 6 points here. Nock wishes he could have had 3 more, would have actually halved the distance between him and his opponent there. But still, second place, 7 points. Decent pickup here. He needs more, though, if he's going to qualify for the next round.
Yeah, still a little ways to go, right? I mean, Nock and Cosu tied at 15, and then they've still got JiMin ahead of both of them at 21. And, you know, 6 points, yeah, that could flip on any given track, but the rest of it also determined, you know, is determined by Spell or JJONG or, you know, Luning. How quickly do they reach the 50? Because then the race might abruptly end. Well, right now, we are looking to go to the next track chosen by Spell. It will be Village Boom Hill Tunnel.
We go. See how Wave has his start here, because he is having a rough time in this group, sitting at -1, has just been finishing bottom 2 most of these tracks, unfortunately, as Nock will once again be the leader here, this time much earlier than last on a 1-lap track here. having the lead early is pretty huge.
Yeah, and we talked about it during the team match earlier today as well, but it starts to get really narrow around this section of the track. So if you keep that first place, you have a fairly good chance of maintaining it all the way to the end.
Yeah, if he can play defensively like he did on Brazil, I think this is definitely going to be an opportunity for him. But Luning, man, he is relentless.
Oh yeah, but that aggression, he pays for it a little bit, actually makes an opening for JJONG to try to catch up briefly as well.
Cosu here in 5th place, also trying to make a run for it here with that Nitro, is getting closer to challenging these players. He really desperately needs a top 3 finish here, sitting at 15 points. He's not out of the running just yet, but one bad finish and he pretty much is. Yeah, and the draft brings JJONG all the way close right on Nox's back, and he should have another opportunity. The draft on the shortcut, Nox going to be able to block for it one more time, but JJONG should have one more opportunity after this corner. Okay, here we go, JJONG, one last chance to try to cut through corner to corner.
Yeah, and it comes through, and he's able to maintain that acceleration thanks to the draft after bumping Nox out of the way, and JJONG will get his second first place finish.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate for Nox again, just at the last possible second. Both of these tracks, he's got a lead for 90% plus, but it'll be JJONG who takes it away here at the end. Another last place finish for Wave will drop him down to -2 in total here of points. Really unfortunate for this player. We talked about as one of our underdogs for sure, just not having his night. Will be 3 seconds behind completion. He did, of course, kind of tease us and do a little spin there at the end because he knew that there was no way he was going to pass. But 35 points for JJONG now. We're getting to potentially final 2-track territory here if we continue to see these top 3 players place in top 2 or top 3. JiMin here also pushing ahead 25-22. Cosu, you know, I mean, he basically needs a win if he's actually getting out of this group. He needs a first place finish.
Yeah, especially because, I mean, again, you're fighting against both JiMin and Nox, right? So even if you overtake, maybe even if one person finishes 8th, if the other is still around 4th or 5th, Kosu's not going to get that point differential. But right now, we will go to JJONG's next selection. He's going to take us to another difficult track. It will be Desert Ancient Aqueducts. All eyes on the top 4 right now, but we do have a couple players trying to make something happen as we enter the later tracks here in Solos Group D.
Now, there are so many hard corners on this track, as well as these, I don't want to call them roundabouts, they essentially function as corners here, these, like the aqueducts themselves, the fountains, whatever you want to call these, because this is where things actually are so risky. If you take an aggressive inner, the punish is so severe. You mess it up once and you're dropping back into 8th place, so there's just no hope for you in the race. So, you know, it's a track where I think risky players can be rewarded. You know, if that's your playstyle, like Luning, for example, it's not really going to be the track for Cosu, let's just say, because you are really going to have to take some aggressive plays. Now, this part of the track, not so much here towards the end. We'll have this little Z before that wider turn here. Luning maintaining first place right now. Spell actually back in 8th. Something happened to him. Saw him shoot back down to 8th. Not entirely sure why, but he's catching up.
Yeah, he's trying to catch right back up. Of course, a couple of these straightaways, you get a couple more cuts in, just try to regain that boost gauge. And now everyone seems to be pretty much on track. A couple collisions even on these corners. Like you mentioned, I mean, so many 90-degree turns on this track, right? That is the name pretty much of the entire track. Like you said, the aqueducts, they're simply wider versions, so they give the illusion that you can make more aggressive plays, but right now the top 3, they're all kind of respecting their distances from each other.
Yeah, it kind of creates this like multi-corner turn where you can hold them all as one, and Luning, man, he has just handled them all so well, and he's actually bought himself a little bit more flexibility here. Once again, JJONG trying to make a play for this Nox, man. He needs that first place finish so badly. He was robbed of it twice. Maybe this 3rd time will be the charm here.
Yeah, he's going to find a draft timing here around that zigzag, and he's trying to take the outer off the acceleration, but he cannot maintain that speed, and JJONG just boosts right past him. Can JJONG hold on to that first place? He's defending against Luning. Meanwhile, JiMin gets knocked back a little bit. Cosu, meanwhile, shoots forward ahead of both Nox and JiMin, so he's going to start to try to close that point gap.
Yeah, really important that he's able to push his way into top 3. I mean, keeping the dream alive. It's still a dream at the moment, as JJONG will win on track selection here, playing it very well. I have to say he gets a huge cheer from the crowd as well. That Luning also handled this track extremely well, and you know, holding first place for that long on this track of all tracks too, just really showcases his experience here. As Cosu will pick up the 5 points here, and that'll put him at 23. So he's just behind Nock and JiMin. You know, it feels like it's a race right now between Cosu, Nock, and JiMin. Spell to a certain extent as well, but like these 3 players are all vying for that top 4. Spell, I mean, there's a chance he gets eliminated, but I'm not counting on that right now with how he's been racing.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much for Spell, he would have to get 8th place, and one of JiMin and Cosu would have to, you know, shoot forward or knock, something like that. But meanwhile, right now, JJONG, he just has to get a podium finish to really wrap up Group D here. He's only 5 points away from the 50-point benchmark. Meanwhile, Luning, if Luning gets first place, regardless of where JJONG is, that would also wrap up the solos here for Group D in the round of 32. And JJONG takes us to another one with quite a few turns. It's going to be Mine 3 shortcuts.
Off we go on Mine 3 shortcuts. As you mentioned, William, this is very likely to be our final track here in solos. All it is a podium required here for JJONG. Also, if Luning takes first place, that will wrap it up as well. Speaking of, he's sitting in pole position right now.
Yeah, he just started to shoot forward and said, you know what, I'll wrap this up. I'm not going to rely on JJONG to finish the race here. I want to make sure I choose my own destiny. Now, JiMin, of course, one of those racers that is somewhat in trouble here for that 4th place mark, so he wants to make sure he gets a high finish, get a lot of those points to secure his own placement into the round of 16.
Yeah, competing with Spell and Nock right now, so Nock sitting at 6 right now for Spell, so right on his heels. JiMin would love to actually finish this one, get 10 points and extend that lead for another track, as JJONG actually having a bit of a rough start here, sitting back in 7th place, so the observers kind of highlighting if Luning doesn't finish this, it does seem likely actually that we are going to an additional track.
Yeah, that is kind of crazy, right? We had all these conditions and maybe none of them will be met here. Luning getting pushed out of that first place finish right now. I mean, this puts a little pressure on Luning himself as well if he wants to make sure that he's able to go forward as that first seed here from Group D.
Yeah, see about a 4th of a second lead here, 4% right now, as Luning is trying aggressively to try to pass it, but the way that Percent handled that corner was beautiful, blocks Luning out. And he's doing it again here. Luning trying to get that draft extra push here. And man, he is so hot on the heels of Percent. It's extremely close between these two right now.
Oh, and Percent goes a little bit too sharp, gets knocked entirely out of the race. Meanwhile, Nock says, I just want another track to try to catch up. JiMin just wants to finish ahead of Nock, and while Nock will overtake JiMin at the end, that should still secure JiMin. We'll have to double check, but Luning, most importantly, gets first place, gets the 50 points, and that should wrap up Group D here in the round of 32.
It's really close, but I think you're right. I don't think it's a tiebreaker situation between the two of them, but it is going to be very close. We will check out those final scores before we jump into this, but Luning, man, he had such a consistent performance. I think easily the most consistent racer. Also gets track record here as well, beating Hyunsu's old record by almost a full second.
Oh, it is a
tiebreaker. It is a tiebreaker. Okay,
yeah,
so
I just got to that calculation myself. I was like, oh no, it is a tiebreaker.
All right, well, this is really exciting. Unfortunately, Cosu, Percent, and Wave all eliminated here. Cosu, I think, man, the guy performed, honestly, I think better than how he did in his group in preseason 1. I think he's shown some improvements here, and I'm as an old man who's been doing video games for a long time, I'm also like always keeping a close eye on the old gamers, okay? Cosu's not that old, by the way. He's much younger than me. But you know what I mean. He's been around for a long time. He's out of the military, came back. He did not qualify, but I think a good performance for him. Very much closer than the other eliminated players. And we will have that tiebreaker race to decide whether it is going to be JiMin or Nock to advance, you know.
Ooh, 1v1, and it just so happens they were sitting next to each other as well, so see who's going to be able to keep that condition. But it's funny, right? We talked about how Nock tries to play that Super Observer Pension style. It didn't seem like it was working in the first couple tracks, and yet again, here he is vying for that 4th place cutoff to make it into the round of 16.
Yeah, it's crazy because JiMin has never been the ace for Liv Sandbox, the item ace, right? But 1v1, not something you really associate with this player. Let's see how he does, because this is a completely different skill set.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll be going back to the first track of this group. It is going to be Mine Winding Slopes. And the race begins. Let it be remembered that JiMin and Nock, JiMin got 6th place in that first track today, and Nock got 8th. So now it's really just between them 1v1, no one else to mess them up.
Yeah, it's a single lap track here, and the parts of the track where it gets really crazy, there's so many different opportunities actually to pass here. I think I almost call this an ace match, but in this tiebreaker, in this 1v1 scenario, it's such an exciting track to watch because there is that chance for some drama to occur, for someone to fall off of the track, for example. As Nock has a pretty significant lead right now, but JiMin will pass him, actually. Caster Curse coming through.
Yeah, JiMin with a good timing on the drafts as well. Earlier, off the jump, he actually holds back as he gets the draft, and then he times his boost off the draft as well to try to continue. He actually gets a stop against Nock, but it's not enough to put Nock behind. Nock boosts right afterwards to maintain the momentum. JiMin cuts right on the inner line again, though.
Nock has been doing such a great job of building his nitro. He actually has a significant lead, actually, over JiMin right now, but he'll need to use that to close the gap here, maybe with a draft, as we are getting, closer to the end here on the single lag track. Some hairpin turns coming through, and there's this weird U-shaped turn here. He's looking for the spin on it.
Yeah, Nock gets it clean, and JiMin isn't able to block against it. JiMin does get one more draft, and Nock, he's not going to be able to get the draft in time. JiMin, with it, he is going to avoid the rocks and barely cross the finish line first. Makes it to the round of 16. Nock will be eliminated here in the round of 32.
A little bit of a respectful fist bump shared here as well. It was a great race, and JiMin, I mean, it looked for a moment like things were dangerous for him. Nock had control, had that additional nitro, but ultimately, one extra collision there, and JiMin pushes past him and then is able to maintain his composure through the harder part of the track there at the end and the final jump, and will be able to take it out. So JiMin will be advancing from the group, will be able to have that opportunity in double elimination. Of course, we'll be seeing a lot more of Nock in the rest of this preseason for Team League. So, it's unfortunate to lose here, but it is a preseason, and it's not the end of his KDL.
Yeah, definitely not. Meanwhile, I mean, good news for Seongnam Rocks, right? Both of their players here in Group D will be moving on to the round of 16. Aura will still send Luning up from this group specifically into the round of 16. And then, of course, JiMin from Live Sandbox. And I gotta say, I mean, JiMin's awareness in that 1v1 situation of when to time his drafts, right, and his boost to really chain together with that, understanding that he still had another chance with the last draft, even after the spin turn from Nock. It starts to show a lot more promise as he has now become that hybrid player for Sandbox, right? Yeah. He's no longer the item ace.
Exactly. I feel like JiMin has shown us there's nothing he can't do, Like, he can win a 1v1 extremely well. He will play well in item. He will actually be a great team player, whether he's the front runner or he's going to be someone who's doing a little bit more defensive and sweeping. He's just one of our kind of jackknife type players. He can literally do anything, it feels like. So excited to see him advance because he's an exciting player to follow through that double elimination stage because he's just such a unique player. For a Wave here, a little bit of an unfortunate experience, I'd say, going out with -2 and just not really having any top placings in the group. But I think beyond that, like, the -2 doesn't really do justice how some of his starts were really good. It doesn't actually showcase, like, some of his lap ones were very competitive and actually, held first even once or twice for a moment. But ultimately just not consistent enough here. And it was kind of the group we expected, right? Really 6 racers in contention for a majority of the time.
Yeah, I mean, again, a very tough group, right? The other groups, we all kind of said, okay, like, there's 4 favorites and then maybe like 1 or 2 players that could contend for 4th place. And this was like, okay, well, there's 6 racers that could all make it through. So who knows what's going to happen? I mean, even JJONG, despite the record he's had in KRPL and the ace match streak that he's held so far in preseason, he wasn't the first place seed, right? Going up to the round of 16, it's Luning. So that just shows how tough this group was.
Yeah, and that's with picking up multiple first place finishes as well. It's a banger of a group, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we're going to be seated now moving into the round of 16 and going into the double elimination portion.
Of course.
It's going to be, what groups we get could be quite exciting.
Yeah.
Like, you're looking at players like Neil, for example, who was so close to taking preseason 1, and you have Hero, right, who's a really strong player right now in preseason 2. Where they end up meeting up against players like Luning, like Hero, Luning, and Neil in the same group, that could be a thing. That could happen.
Yeah, I mean, a crazy group, especially with the roster pool we have right now in solos. Of course, still the defending champions from solos as well. And Cool over on KWANGDONGFREECS. I mean, World, he got 3rd place last preseason rather as well. So it's a pretty stacked round of 16. And like you mentioned, Wolf, the most important thing is it's double elimination from here on out. So we're not going to have to say goodbye to any players players just yet. We get to watch them a couple more times.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, if you just tuned in, we actually have one more team match after this, so we're not actually about to close. I know normally we actually end with solos, but as you guys could see here, Live Sandbox versus Seraphic, we got that on the docket.
Yeah, that's going to be the next team match, ladies and gentlemen. We will take a quick break to set up for that one. And when we come back, it's the team match between Live Sandbox and Seraphic. We'll see you soon.